Imagine doing everything right. You save in Bitcoin. You've been doing that for years. You follow every step to the letter. You follow online advice. You secure your Bitcoin in a hardware wallet. You keep your seed phrase hidden. And you sleep well at night knowing that your Bitcoin is secure. Then one day, you wake up and it's gone. And it's been taken directly from your wallet. Now that's the reality of what's happened to far too many people over the last week. So what has actually happened here? What's gone wrong? Who's affected? And most importantly, are your Bitcoin safe? Now let's break it down and find out together. Now first and foremost, we're obviously talking about the Coldcard hack. Now what is a Coldcard and why did people trust it so much? Well, Coldcard is essentially a Bitcoin hardware wallet. Now a lot of hardware wallets have the ability to store other cryptocurrencies. Think Ethereum, Solana, XRP, as well as storing your Bitcoin on them. But a Coldcard could only actually store Bitcoin. And for this reason and many others, some people chose to store their Bitcoin on a Coldcard rather than a different hardware wallet or on an exchange. Now in the Bitcoin world, Coldcard was considered one of the more serious options for people storing significant amounts of Bitcoin. And this is why this situation has caused such a strong reaction and has kind of rocked the Bitcoin world. So what actually happened here? Well, unfortunately, Coldcard had a serious bug or perhaps flaw in its code, which unfortunately means it had a weak seed phrase generator, which allowed somebody to use AI to brute force their way into people's wallets and take the Bitcoin out. Now to put this as simply as I can, because Bitcoin wallets in themselves can be quite a complicated topic, every Bitcoin wallet essentially has what's called a seed phrase. Now this is usually 12 to 24 words, which is specific to that Bitcoin wallet. Because of this, if you lose the wallet for whatever reason, you can recover it anywhere in the world using that specific seed phrase. So if somebody can find out what your seed phrase is, they can go into your wallet and take your Bitcoin, which is exactly what happened with this Coldcard situation. Now this is where it gets kind of complicated with seed phrases, how they're generated and everything like that. But normally when a seed phrase is generated, they use 256 bits of entropy. Now if this means nothing to you, you are definitely not alone. Now the best analogy I found was to think about 256 light switches all lined up in a row. Now these light switches can be any combination of on or off. Now that creates quite a few different possibilities, and your wallet is any one combination of those light switches. But in the affected Coldcard wallets, the generation for the seed was sometimes as low as 40. Now for the MK3 devices, some people were estimating it was about 40 bits of entropy. Some of the newer models were 72, but this is still drastically different and really shortens the amount of time it takes to brute force into a wallet. Obviously you have a combination of 256 versus 40 or 72. Now again, you read a lot of things online, some things are true, some things are not. I'm going to try and keep this as factual as possible, but it's estimated that in order to brute force your way into a 256-bit generated wallet, it's going to take longer than the universe has existed in order to brute force and stumble upon the right combination. But with the 40 bits, that shrinks considerably and can be done within hours. But the problem was that some wallets weren't being generated with the level of randomness that they should have had. Now, one of the most important things to understand with this wasn't Bitcoin's network being hacked. So Bitcoin's network, blockchain, and underlying cryptography has remained unbroken. The concern is with these specific Coldcard wallets. So who's actually affected? Now this is where it gets a little bit complicated in terms of giving advice. Like I'm not actually going to give anybody specific advice, but if I held my Bitcoins on any kind of Coldcard, and I would definitely be trying to go and secure my Bitcoin in any way I could. Now this vulnerability in the code has affected multiple Coldcard models. Now the main one that's been affected is the Mark III, the MK3 Coldcard. Now as far as I'm aware, these were the main models that the attackers were targeting. There are some rumours that even newer models have been affected as well. So I would not assume that if you hold your Bitcoin on a newer Coldcard that you are safe. Now Coldcard has released firmware fixes, but updating the firmware does not magically repair a seed that was generated using the old method. Luckily they've released instructions on what to do, so you can go check out the manufacturer's advice on that if you do have a Coldcard. And of course if you are watching this because you do have a Coldcard, I would definitely stop the video here and just go check that you haven't been affected. But do not take advice from a random guy on YouTube. It is up to you to do your own research and make sure that you're securing your Bitcoin in the best way that's for you. I'm sure some people are watching and they're wondering if it affects them if they have a different hardware wallet like a Ledger or a Trezor. Luckily, no security incidents have been reported by them, and in fact they have both confirmed that they both use 256 bits of entropy when generating the seed on these devices. And this particular Coldcard incident thankfully does not mean that Ledger and Trezor or another hardware wallet has been compromised. And of course, if you're holding your Bitcoin on an exchange like Coinbase or Binance, or even using a ETF like IBIT, and a vulnerability on Coldcard does not affect those either. Alright, so why is this such a big deal? Well, unfortunately, for better or for worse, this is what makes Bitcoin so much different to traditional banking. Essentially, you're in charge of it. Because if someone steals money from a bank, the company, the FCA, even the government will get involved, and obviously that makes it a lot easier to reclaim the funds and of course get you your money back. But with Bitcoin, it's so much different. You are the bank. And this is why people love Bitcoin so much. You're the final authority. You can send Bitcoin to anybody you want and nobody can stop you. Even the most powerful governments in the world, nobody can stop you. Nobody can freeze your account because they disagree with a political opinion you have. Nobody can take your Bitcoin away, providing it's secure. But the downside to that is that the mistakes hit so much harder. And I think a lot of people are going to rethink this self-sovereignty and think, is it actually worth it? And is it maybe easier to just buy a Bitcoin ETF or simply hold it on an exchange? Because it's not just the hackers you have to worry about. Of course, in the Coldcard situation, you do. But there's also other things like sending Bitcoin to the wrong address, losing your seed phrase, locking yourself out of your account. All of these can result in the loss of your Bitcoin. And yeah, I know this hack has just happened, but a lot of the time, the biggest security flaw is yourself. And this is why I just buy the Bitcoin ETF. All of the security things are somebody else's problem, someone much smarter than myself. Now, does this mean hardware wallets are unsafe now? In short, no. Nothing's really changed with hardware wallets. This was specific to Coldcard. But what a lot of people are doing is spreading out the risk. There's risk vectors everywhere. It was only 4 years ago, in 2022, that FTX crashed. Binance has also had some security threats and some hacks. And now we're seeing a serious hardware wallet security failure. Every single system has risks. And this is where things like passphrases, multi-sig, and multiple wallets can be quite useful. But remember, these can bring complications to their own. But remember, if you use a passphrase and you forget it, there's no company that can go in and reset and let you gain access to your account, because that would kind of defeat the point of the security. So you can permanently lose access to the Bitcoin just purely by forgetting your passphrase. Now, this is why I think Bitcoin is kind of so off-putting to regular people. There's so much to learn about Bitcoin. First of all, explaining what it is in the first place. Then when you get into the actual security and self-sovereignty and self-custody, it becomes a bit too much of a headache for the normal person. It's not just the price movements that you have to worry about. It's losing access to your account, it's all the security involved, and now on top of this, you have a serious hardware flaw with Coldcard. But saying that, exchanges probably aren't the worst option, but we don't know what the future holds, so I'm not going to recommend you keep it in an ETF or an exchange. All I'm saying is there's multiple options, and in the future there'll probably be even more options for someone storing a Bitcoin. What's to say that you can't just send your Bitcoin to your bank and the bank will keep custody of it for you? So it is a bit of a worrying time, and you do need to take where you store your Bitcoin seriously. So please do your own research on where to store it. But what about AI? Will it ever be able to crack Bitcoin wallets? Because the hackers used AI to find the flaw in the Coldcard seed generation. Now, AI is extremely powerful, but it doesn't magically break mathematics. Now, I used AI to write the script for this video. Then I read through it, I rewrote it in my own words, I changed, added, and removed parts that I didn't like, and ChatGPT managed to generate the structure of this video in about 2 seconds. And it's taken me well over an hour to do my own version of the script. And I think that's where AI is incredibly powerful. It's the speed of the work. And because of that, AI is now being used to find flaws in codes that have been around for years without anyone noticing the flaw in them. And I think that's the most interesting thing about this situation. So yes, if the code is bad, AI can be used to find the flaw. And don't think that people aren't doing this with every other hardware wallet. But if it's a properly generated 256 bits of entropy, and it's got a passphrase on it, AI cannot be magically used to crack that wallet. So it's a very scary situation. If you hold Bitcoin, what should you do? Now, I'm not giving advice here, and you shouldn't just blindly take advice from some guy on YouTube. including me, however devilishly handsome they might be. But I think what you can do is you can definitely take lessons from this. First, you need to do your research and understand how wallets actually work. And specifically, your wallet. How does your wallet work? You need to know where your seed phrase is. You need to know how many bits of entropy it was generated. You need to know whether you want to use a passphrase or not. You need to know how you would recover your wallet. And then you need to avoid the biggest mistake. First and foremost, never share your seed phrase online, publicly, or basically with anybody else. Don't store it on your email. Don't store it on the cloud. Never ever ever type it into a website. Beware of phishing scams and emails, and don't just assume that buying a hardware wallet automatically makes you safe, or indeed is even safer than an exchange or ETF. And then if you maybe have a significant amount of Bitcoin, you can consider splitting those up into different wallets. Maybe some on a wallet, maybe some on an exchange. Just consider whether you want them all protected by the same seed phrase. And you can even do your own research when it comes to things like multi-sig if it is large enough. But what I'm saying is there isn't one perfect solution. You have to do this yourself. You have to research it yourself. And to summarize that, the hardware wallet is a tool, but the person using it is the most important part of that security system. But the threat of quantum computers reaching into your wallet and taking them has literally just happened without quantum computing. But let's try and end on a little bit of a positive. Now, the good thing about the blockchain is it is transparent. People can see where these funds have been and they can see the hacker's wallet. Because of that, that might give hope to some people that these hackers are eventually caught. Now, whether the Bitcoin is recovered and ultimately given back to the victims is another story. And hopefully incidents like this will just make other hardware wallets and exchanges try to find flaws and make it even more secure. Because this isn't the fault of the ordinary person who bought a Coldcard, because quite frankly they believed they were making the safest decision for them. But as mentioned earlier, this is the uncomfortable decision with becoming your own bank and becoming self-sovereign. But you also get the responsibility of what comes with that control. Don't trust people on X saying our wallets are compromised. Don't trust people on X saying that Bitcoin is dead. And don't trust people on X in general. And I'll see you in the next video. See you!